totally unacceptable as far as I'm concerned.
My Lords, it's a great pleasure to follow what I would have to say is, I think, two very important speeches in your Lordship's House. And they were from two expert contributors, and I have nothing to add except that they've certainly convinced me that there's extremely grave cause for concern here. But what I wanted to speak about was another government amendment, Government Amendment 467F, which is about requiring local authorities to transfer land to academy trusts. And I think we've got to look at this in the context of what's been the huge privatisation of public land, 2 million hectares, 10% of the entire British landmass that's happened over the past few decades. That was estimated to be worth in 2018 prices £400 billion. And it's also in the context of just in the past month, the government has apparently won, certainly in the High Court anyway, a legal tussle with Annington Homes, owned by the private equity firm Terra Firma, over the privatisation of the Ministry of Defence housing portfolio, which the National Audit Office had estimated it had cost, had left the government between £2 billion and £4 billion worse off. Now, the amendment is quite long and quite technical, and I've done my best to grind my way through to make some sense of it. But I really would basically ask what we're seeing here is a swap, and what assessment does the government see in the risk of this swap and the lack of clarity that might well occur in terms of local democracy and local understanding. A couple of other things to ask about this amendment. 9A subclause 7 talks about the local authority bearing the costs of this swap, and I wonder why that is the case. And I'm also the underlying concern that's a concern to many local residents around the country, many local authorities, is that potentially this is a loss of an essential resource that disappears from public space for the interests of private profit. And of course, one of the case studies of this was the Durand Academy, a particularly infamous case in Lambeth, where the Department for Education terminated an academy's funding agreement, and it maintained it still owned the land on the site, and an accommodation and a leisure centre had been built there. And speaking as a former school governor myself, I'm well aware of the complications that have arisen from school buildings that are also mixed with private accommodation that's leasehold, private accommodation that's owned by the council. Very complex situations are being created. So I'm really seeking reassurance from the noble lady, the Minister, assuming that's who will be responding, that this amendment is not going to put further risks in terms of the transfer of lands to Academy Trust.